Yes, Ravens flock. Things are starting to heat up behind the scenes in Baltimore, and we need to talk about something that could completely shape this team's season. Everyone is excited to see Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and the stars back on the field, but the biggest story right now isn't about the superstars. It's about the tough decisions the Ravens have to make before week 1. There are starting jobs still up for grabs, crowded position groups, and players fighting for their NFL future. And honestly, one decision has me thinking more than any other. Who should be the starting center protecting Lamar Jackson? Some fans believe Danny Pinter is the safest choice because of his experience. Others think Jovan Gwynn deserves the opportunity to prove himself. I want to know where you stand. Who would you trust to start at center for the Ravens this season? Let me know down in the comments. And if you've been supporting the Baltimore Ravens for more than 15 years, hit that like button as hard as you can. Alright, let's talk about the biggest roster decisions facing the Ravens. Now let's get into everything happening with this team. Training camp is finally getting close, and that means speculation is about to become reality. The rookies, quarterbacks, and injured veterans report first, followed shortly after by the rest of the veterans. Public practices, preseason games, and joint practices will all give the coaching staff the opportunity to evaluate every position before the roster is trimmed down to 53 players. Every rep matters now because several positions remain completely unsettled. The biggest question entering camp has to be the starting center position. That job is still wide open, and it could become one of the most important storylines of the entire offseason. Right now, Danny Pinter and Jovan Gwynn have received the majority of the opportunities during off-season workouts. Danny Pinter appears to have a slight edge thanks to his experience, while Jovan Gwynn continues trying to prove he deserves serious consideration. Corey Bullock is also part of the competition, although surgery kept him from participating fully during minicamp, leaving everyone waiting to see what he can show once the pads come on. Nick Dawkins is also in the room, but he hasn't generated nearly as much attention during the offseason. This competition is so important because the center isn't simply another offensive lineman. Every offensive play begins with that player. The center has to communicate protections, make sure the offensive line stays organized, build chemistry with Lamar Jackson, and most importantly, deliver clean snaps every single play. The Ravens may not need an all-pro center this season, but they absolutely need someone who can be reliable and steady. If the rest of the offensive line performs at a high level, solid play in the middle could be enough for this offense to continue operating at an elite level. Training camp will reveal whether Danny Pinter can secure that role or whether another player emerges as the better option. Another fascinating battle is taking place along the defensive line. This position group is loaded with players competing for very limited roster spots. Travis Jones is an obvious lock to make the team. Calais Campbell is another player who is expected to have a secure place on the roster. Nnamdi Matabike is also firmly in the team's plans whenever he is ready to return, although there are still questions regarding exactly when he will be available. After those names, the competition becomes much more complicated. John Jenkins brings valuable veteran experience, but even experienced players cannot assume anything at this stage. Broderick Washington enters camp with something to prove after dealing with injuries and questions surrounding his role. Then there are younger players like C.J. Okoye, Razad Benny, and Aeneas Peebles, all trying to earn one of the remaining spots. This is exactly the kind of competition every successful organization wants. There is legitimate depth, but depth also creates difficult decisions. The Ravens typically keep around 5 interior defensive linemen, meaning somebody with talent will almost certainly miss the final roster. Some players could eventually land on the practice squad, but others may be claimed elsewhere. Throughout preseason games, fans should pay close attention to who receives meaningful snaps and who is resting. Those details often reveal which players the coaching staff views as roster locks and which ones are still fighting to survive. The cornerback room presents another major decision. The top of the depth chart appears relatively secure. Nate Wiggins is expected to have a major role. Marlon Humphrey remains one of the leaders of the secondary and brings tremendous versatility by being able to move throughout the defense. T.J. Tampa is expected to contribute on the outside, while Chidobe Awuzie gives the Ravens another experienced option. Rookie Chandler Rivers also appears positioned to make the roster. That already accounts for 5 cornerbacks, but Baltimore will likely carry 6. That leaves only one available position for several players battling to continue their NFL careers. Jalen Armour-Davis, T.J. Martin, Bill Halcone, and Robert Longerbeam all have reasons to believe they belong. Cone and Longerbeam both dealt with season-ending injuries previously, while Martin contributed on special teams and stepped into defensive situations when injuries occurred. The coaching staff must determine whether they prioritize outside size, slot versatility, special teams value, or long-term development. Every practice rep and every preseason snap could determine who ultimately wins that final spot. This may quietly become one of the most entertaining competitions to watch throughout August. The running back situation is also more interesting than it appears on the surface. Derrick Henry will obviously be the featured back. There's very little debate about that. The real question involves everything happening behind him. Justice Hill has established himself as a reliable receiving option and an excellent pass protector. His experience gives him a strong opportunity to continue serving as the primary backup in many situations. Rashad Ali also remains part of the conversation because of his ability in passing situations and his understanding of pass protection responsibilities. Then there is Adam Randall, who brings a completely different dimension. Having experience as a receiver gives him additional versatility, and his ability to contribute as a return specialist strengthens his case for meaningful playing time. The discussion isn't really about which running backs make the roster as much as it is about how the coaching staff distributes opportunities throughout the season. Managing Derrick Henry's workload correctly could become one of the biggest coaching responsibilities all year. Everyone wants Henry fresh during the biggest moments of the season, but Baltimore also needs to take advantage of the unique skills that Justice Hill, Rashad Ali, and Adam Randall provide. Finding the right balance between keeping Henry healthy while maximizing offensive production won't be easy. Safety is another position where one important roster decision remains. Kyle Hamilton is firmly established as one of the league's premier defensive players. Malachi Starks joins the group with high expectations, and veteran Jalen Hawkins provides another experienced option expected to contribute. The real competition centers on the fourth safety position. Kayvon Wallace enters with NFL experience and special teams value, while Keandre Jackson has already demonstrated his ability to make plays in the kicking game. Jackson has reportedly continued making positive impressions and could be rewarded if he continues that momentum throughout training camp. Although the fourth safety may not receive the same attention as starters, that player often becomes extremely valuable over a long NFL season. Injuries happen, rotations change, and special teams can decide close football games. Baltimore needs someone capable of stepping into multiple roles whenever necessary. Finally, there's the battle for the emergency quarterback position. Lamar Jackson remains the unquestioned starter, while Tyler Huntley provides an experienced backup. The real question is who becomes the third quarterback. Skylar Thompson enters camp with NFL starting experience and appears to have an early advantage. Diego Pavia and Joe Fagnano will both try to prove they belong, but experience often matters greatly at this position. Thompson has already shown he can operate in NFL games, which naturally gives him credibility entering this competition. Even though everyone hopes the third quarterback never needs to play meaningful snaps during the regular season, having dependable depth remains important. These players will also receive plenty of opportunities during preseason games, giving the coaching staff valuable information before making a final decision. As training camp approaches, these competitions remind us that championship teams are built far beyond the starting lineup. Everyone already knows what Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphrey, and the other stars can accomplish. The real excitement comes from discovering which young players seize unexpected opportunities, which veterans protect their roster spots, and which underdogs force the coaching staff to make impossible decisions. Every summer, players emerge from nowhere to surprise everyone. Others unfortunately fall short despite months of hard work. That's what makes training camp one of the most exciting periods of the NFL calendar. Every practice tells another chapter of the story, and every preseason game moves someone closer to realizing a lifelong dream while bringing someone else closer to disappointment. The Ravens have assembled a talented roster with legitimate depth across multiple position groups.